The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in, students to the game. My name is Alex Baumann, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts today, Nathan Glidewell and Gray Oldenburg. Gray, glad to have you back after a little bit of a hiatus there, but have a full house now for the first time in a few weeks. So let's get started here with updating the NFL head coaching hires. Only one position left right now, that being New Orleans Saints were the last team to hire their head coach. But these four teams ended up making pretty big hires here. Gray, Nathan, Jacksonville Jaguars hired Bucs offensive coordinator Liam Cohen. Dallas Cowboys hired their offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. The New York Jets hired the Lions defense coordinator Aaron Glenn. And then the Raiders hired former Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll. Guys, what are your thoughts on these hires?
It's a little bit of a few shockers in there. The Cowboys hire really blew me away. I know everybody's going to say, "Wow, Pete Carroll back in the game, going to the Raiders. That's crazy. That's different." But the Cowboys hiring from within really shocked me. I don't see upside there at all. That wasn't an offense that was efficient. Really, I was going to say this past year, really the past 5 years at times, they've had times where they've been good, but not efficient enough and definitely not good enough to compete to what those Cowboys fans expect their team to compete to. So I thought that one was a little weird, but the Pete Carroll hire, I'm actually really excited about that. Excited who they maybe go see and try and go get at the quarterback spot, whether in the draft or in free agency this year, see what they do there. You got a really good up-and-coming tight end and a guy like Brock Bowers and some good guys on the defensive end as well. That Raiders team isn't down in the dumps. They just really had a bad past few years ever since they moved out to Las Vegas. But they can turn it around. And I think the hire of Pete Carroll could be it's either going to be the thing that does turn it around or the thing that puts them in the down in the dumps.
Yeah, for me, it was Aaron Glenn going to the Jets, throwing out the last few games of the regular season and then the playoff game this season. I felt like the Lions defense had performed to its max capabilities. I feel like Aaron Glenn's a fantastic defensive coach. But as we've seen in the NFL time and time again, defensive head coaches don't normally work out. So I have a lot of questions surrounding that. And then, of course, the Jets' future. What's happening to Aaron Rodgers? How many years does he have left? Or is he retiring this year? What do you do with some of these huge contracts you've taken on? You traded for Devontae Adams. How long are you going to keep him for? His contract is pretty large. So how are you going to get around some of these aging guys is the main thing. And then how are you going to install your own system? Because it's weird having to go from coaching a defense to taking over a head coach and plugging in the right guys to kind of fit the scheme. So Aaron Glenn has a lot of work cut out for him, especially following this recent Jet season, which I would say was rather disappointing.
Any thoughts on Liam Cohen and his decision to where he was not going to go to the Jaguars? Then the Jaguars decided they were going to fire their GM, Trent Baalke, and then Liam Cohen, before they fired Trent Baalke, was like, let me come back to the Bucs for the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league. And then Baalke was fired, and Cohen said, no, I'm actually take the Jaguars job because Baalke was the reason I wasn't taking it. So there's a lot of love-hate on the Cohen hire with his decision to kind of flip-flop back and forth. Do y'all agree with that, the decision to kind of play the Bucs there?
I don't. I don't really know. It's a business. When it comes down to it, there is always going to be a little bit of animosity. And these are human beings and running a business. And yes, it is one collective business, the NFL, but there's tons of different parts. And it's just like you're competing not only on the football field, but and making money and that sort of thing. And I think there was a little bit of animosity and some of the relationships there, just like you mentioned, Alex. But I'll be interested to see how that works out in Jacksonville, see what direction they go with the offense. We'll find out this next year.
Yeah, just the repeat on that. I mean, Gray pretty much touched on it, but you want as a member of like a Saints organization, you want to see your coordinators that go on to take head coaching jobs. You want to see them succeed. I feel like as a Bucs fan, you should have that same kind of standpoint. Look, the Jaguars are in a ridiculously complicated situation, especially coming off of this year. What are you going to do with Trevor Lawrence? Is he the quarterback of the future? How are you going to solve the defensive issues? You're a playoff caliber team, yet you're not making the playoffs. So a lot of work ahead of them. But if you're a Bucs fan, I don't think you should get caught up in it too much. Coordinators come and go all the time. And to expect someone to continuously stay at the coordinator position and not leave for a higher paying position, especially head coach, I think that's unrealistic, especially in today's league where people are just thrown around left and right.
It's definitely an interesting hire there with Liam Cohen. We know he's talented. What he did with Baker Mayfield this past year in that Bucs offense, and then what he did with Will Levis in college at Kentucky. So he has a good track record developing quarterbacks. That's good for Trevor Lawrence going forward because he has struggled mightily under his head coaches in Jacksonville. But it's going to come down to what you said, Nathan, how they construct this team around him, because they're in a dark place right now. They have a lot of question marks surrounding every piece of their roster, even Trevor Lawrence at the quarterback position, because I'm not sold on Trevor Lawrence being the quarterback of the future in Jacksonville, even though they decided they were going to pay him like he was. He hasn't played up to that standard. He hasn't played up to being the best prospect quarterback-wise since Peyton Manning. He's got a lot of work cut out for him. But the rest of the coaches, something I've noticed in this coaching cycle is all the coaches that got fired, there was a question mark at quarterback outside of probably the Patriots, because we know Drake May is an uber-talented quarterback. But you think Jacksonville, you could argue there's a question there. Dallas, people in Dallas would argue there's not a question there. But I think from the outside looking in, Dak Prescott, injury problems, not playing up to the standard, can't win in the playoffs. That slide against the 49ers will never be forgotten for Cowboys fans. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers, are you going to retire? Are you not going to retire? I mean, they have got to figure that out immediately, because that'll definitely change the way they attack the draft and free agency. Because if Aaron Rodgers retires, your only quarterback on the roster is Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis is not going to win you Super Bowl. I'm sorry, he's just not. And then the Las Vegas Raiders, we know their quarterback issues. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Desmond Ridder. None of those guys are going to be decent enough quarterbacks for a guy like Pete Carroll. Something to look out for the Raiders is if they go out and get Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, familiarity with Pete Carroll. They love each other. But I know Russell Wilson isn't the best quarterback in the world, but when you're 74 years old like Pete Carroll, familiarity is what you like to see. Let's move on from the coaching carousel in the NFL and let's talk about the AP poll, guys. It released on Monday. Auburn unanimous number 1 again, Duke number 2, Iowa State number 3, Alabama number 4, Florida number 5, and that rounds out the top 5. There's a ton of SEC teams in this poll, 10 to be exact, if I counted it correctly. Guys, how good is the SEC this year with 10 teams in the poll right now?
It's the best ever. It's the best conference ever. Don't give me that crap about that early 2000 teens, Big East crap. No. This is the best conference ever. Only 2 teams right now on the road that would be considered a quad 1 game. That's LSU and South Carolina currently. And how about Vanderbilt jumping into the AP poll for the first time since 2015? And Georgia was in there a few weeks ago or last week. I don't really remember. This SEC not only is the top of the SEC unbelievable, but it's so deep. Chance where you could get 13 to 14 teams in the tournament. Talk about a bid stealing conference. I mean, that's literally the definition of a bid stealing conference. It's incredible. Any team can beat anybody on any given night, especially on the road. It's been proven already how hard it is to win on the road in this conference. And teams are just getting better, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I never thought in today's day and age that we'd be sitting here talking about the SEC being the best basketball conference, but here we are. Just the sheer amount of talent that's spread out throughout the conference. It's not one of those things where it's just top heavy and you have these really just overpowered teams. No, all these teams are talented, even down to the bottom, even with these teams that aren't considered to make the tournament right now. I mean, you talk about LSU and South Carolina, both of those teams still have quality players on it, and they compete night in, night out, and they can get wins in the SEC just like any of these other schools. But I think you'll really notice once we kind of start picking up here soon. I know Alabama has one of the toughest schedules I've ever seen, playing somewhere in the realm of 7 ranked teams consecutively, and like 10 quad 1 games consecutively. That is a gauntlet of a schedule. That's like going and playing 2015 Kentucky and Wisconsin every single week. That's almost that caliber. The sheer amount of talent on these teams is absolutely wild to me. Every single team's fun to watch. I have respect for a lot of them. And I mean, how can you not look forward to every single matchup? I mean, we're getting midweek games, and they're just ranked games every single night. It's just, this is prime college basketball.
Prime college basketball at its finest. I mean, I really do think the hire of Bruce Pearl at Auburn back then was 100%. The thing that lit the fire for the SEC, because you had Rick Barnes come in, Nate Oates wasn't short after. I mean, Vanderbilt hired Mark Byington last season. Missouri, Dennis Gates, even though he had a down year last year, he rebuilt in the portal. They're looking really good. A&M, you get Buzz Williams there. Arkansas, even though Coach Cal is down right now in that team, we know he can do big things. Mark Pope, we clowned that hire at the beginning of the year, but Kentucky, very, very talented basketball team. They're playing. I know they have gone on a losing skid, but we know what they're capable of. Florida and Todd Golden, Bruce Pearl disciple. I mean, that's something to look out for. So the hire of Bruce Pearl really kicked off the SEC dominance. And I hate to say that as an Alabama fan, but it's hard to ignore Bruce Pearl and what he did for the SEC and SEC basketball. Before we get into our bread and butter in Alabama and Auburn basketball, what have been the most disappointing and surprising teams in the SEC this far in the season?
Disappointing. That's easy. It's Arkansas. That's just absolutely crazy, the amount of talent that they have on that Arkansas team in terms of blue chip type of prospect. I don't know, I'm using a football term there, but the 5 stars and the 20,000 seat arena and the fans and the history that they have with Razorback basketball and Coach Cal and his success that he had at Kentucky, and they're terrible. I would take LSU and South Carolina over them any day right now, and those are the 2 teams that are at the bottom. But Arkansas's got to be the most disappointment. They haven't figured it out, and I know Coach Cal will. It's hard to ignore what kind of recruiter he is, no matter what he does on the court. So he'll figure it out. Maybe not this year, but in the future at Arkansas with those resources behind him, like Tyson and Walmart and all them. But I think the most surprising team. I'm gonna steer away from the top here, and I'm going with a team like Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, this is.
Why do I even think of stuff anymore?
I gotta go with Vanderbilt because just like Alex said, new hire, bringing in basically a whole new team into a program that was down kind of in the dumps with Jerry Stackhouse. Even though he wasn't a bad coach, they expect to be better, and they've come in, beat 2 top 10 teams on their own court. Or at home, 2 rushed the courts the past 2 Saturdays. They're playing great. And that's a team that is going to be scary for the top of the SEC on any given night. Surprising, I'd say Vanderbilt, because I thought it would take them a little bit longer for that coach to get things in, but they're off and running real quick.
Yeah, I'll second the Arkansas is disappointing. Coach Cal, your fan base is just it's so much more from you step into the Arkansas job after leaving Kentucky. And that was already a questionable move in my opinion. You step in, you have some of the biggest recruiting backers out there. I mean, you have just unlimited amount of NIL. You bring talented guys in, yet you're not succeeding on the court. And not all of it's on the student athletes. I will say that Coach Cal is really taking a step back. It's disappointing to watch because I feel like the SEC is at its best when Coach Cal is coaching at his best, but it's kind of flipped around this year. And then since Gray took my most surprising, because I really worked hard for that Vanderbilt pick, but you know what, just gonna take that. I'll just go with the basic and go Kentucky. What Mark Pope's been able to do in his first year has been absolutely wild to watch. Very talented roster. I expect them to make a deep run in March. No one wants to play against that team on the offensive end. They can shoot the ball lights out. Still a lot of questions on defense, but I'm sure that they'll tighten things up here in the weeks to come. But, man, SEC is just something else.
I'll give a little bit different answer than Arkansas being the disappointing team. I'll go Texas. I know they're 14-6 as recording this video. They're 3-4 in the SEC. But with the money Texas has backing that program, they're not playing up to what they should be. They have one of the most talented. Nice. They have one of the most talented freshman guards in the country in Trey Johnson. And Gray, you know all about Arthur Kaluma and the business he gave Auburn in that game.
Oh my gosh,
they have a talented roster, but they should have a lot more talent on that roster. And their head coach Rodney Terry has not got what he should have with this current roster. So I think Texas right now is the most disappointing team in this early part of the SEC slate, considering the resources they have at their disposal. They need to go a little bit deeper into their pockets when it comes to the basketball. They're going to compete in the SEC. And I'll go with the most surprising team, Missouri. What they did last year really struggled in that entire season. I don't think they won an SEC game, did they?
Yeah, I won 18. Yeah.
Yeah, but Dennis Gates got some portal guys, brought back Bates, and they're ranked right now, battling hard in every game they play. So I'll go Missouri being the most surprising team in the SEC, considering what happened last season for Dennis Gates. So let's move away from just a SEC look at it, and let's go center it more to Alabama and Auburn. And Gray, let's focus on the Auburn Tigers in their game this past week against Tennessee. Gutty defensive battle, 53-51. I mean, it was gutty. Not a lot of good shooting from either side, but Auburn ended up squeaking out this victory. How did Auburn get this win in a defensive battle when they struggled offensively?
Man, if you would have told me that, if you would have told me before the game that Denver Jones was going to go 0 for 8, Chad Baker-Bizarro was going to go 0 for 5, Tahad Pettiford was going to go 3 for 9, and Miles Kelly was going to go 2 for 8, I'd say, Tennessee's going to win by 25. It's not even going to be close. We don't shoot the ball well. Well, this was by far Auburn's worst offensive performance, and it came against the best defensive team in college basketball. Look, you give credit to Rick Barnes. They were incredible on the defensive end. This was a rock fight. This was every minute in this game was just a full-out war on the basketball court with the 10 guys that were out there. Ziegler was impressive on the defensive end, as he normally is. Meshack was, my goodness, it was outstanding. Chad or Denver could not get any separation whatsoever. But I think what the big thing here is, yes, Auburn beat the number 6 team in the country at home, got another quad 1 win. They're 11-1 quad 1 now, which is unheard of. But Tennessee played the perfect game for them. That's exactly how Tennessee wanted that game to go. And Auburn won. Auburn beat Tennessee at Tennessee's basketball game. And that's something that, if Tennessee plays that type of basketball game against somebody else, they win. But the difference has got to be the return of Janai Broome. Our front line was just considerably better just because he was out there. Without the return of Broome, Auburn didn't win this game. 16 points, 13 rebounds, 4 blocks. I mean, he was an animal out there. Bruce Pearl made a comment after the game and said Janai had a triple-double. I had 16, 13, and 12 missed shots. Bruce going after his player. But Vroom was placed on a minute restriction, was a game time decision. And apparently that minute restriction was wanting to keep him between 15 and 20 minutes in this game. Well, Bruce Pearl saw the way the game was going, and it was a rock fight. And he was going to be the guy who wins or loses the game. And he's got to play. It sounded like Broom was about 60% on that left ankle. And that's something that you did see kind of affect him in the post a little bit. He didn't have as much of a push as he normally does on that left hook that he goes to a lot. And that's something that affected a lot of the shots. And then you talk about the guys at the perimeter. Auburn was getting open shots, even though Tennessee's defense was hounding. They just weren't falling. There's not a single team in college basketball that hasn't had at least one game where the shots weren't falling. But the shots were falling when it counted the most. And Miles Kelly's 3 from the corner off Janai Broom's pass is the biggest shot in Neville Arena history. And that's something that's going to go down to their record books for sure. But it was not an entertaining game to watch, but a really good win for the Tigers to keep moving forward. Get to 11-1 in quad one is unheard of. Got 2 tough road tests coming up. Go to LSU on Wednesday night. We saw what they were able to do at Alabama this past weekend. They were competing. Nathan mentioned them when we were talking about the SEC. That's a team that they're not at the top of the SEC right now, but that's how good the SEC is. LSU is a good basketball team, and going on the road is always tough in this league. And then going to Ole Miss on Saturday is going to be really tough as well, in a really tough road environment, the Pavilion, against a really good Ole Miss team that's got some good wins as well. So just got to keep getting healthy and got to make shots next week. Otherwise, you will lose to a team like LSU or Ole Miss.
We all know Rick Barnes and his March Madness struggles and his inability to get past the Elite Eight and get to the Final Four. But this team this year, the offensive woes have been plentiful, to say the least. So How can Tennessee – we know their defense is elite. How can they get over the hump and beat teams like Auburn when their offense isn't flowing?
Shoot better.
You got to shoot better. You got to make some outside shots. And Tennessee went 4 of 22 in this game. But the thing that Tennessee did so good in this game was they got Auburn to play the way they like to play. The tempo was all in favor of Tennessee. It was a half-court, grinded out rock fight. And that's exactly how Tennessee wants to play, and that's exactly how they're going to beat teams. I said it when I was talking about this game earlier. If Tennessee plays that exact game against Florida on this next weekend at home, they'll beat Florida, even though Florida beat them by 30 in Gainesville. But they will beat Florida if they get Florida to play their type of game. I think Tennessee is one of those teams that if you play down to them, I'm not saying when I say down to them, I'm saying at their level in terms of tempo and pace and that sort of thing. I'm not saying that Tennessee's a bad team. They don't play down to your competition. But if you play like them, they're going to beat you. And that's how Tennessee is going to win moving forward. And yes, you got to figure out a way to shoot the ball better. Chaz Lanier's got to be better than he was. Zakiya Ziegler's got to be better from 3. Oof. My goodness. I also don't get the final play, Rick Barnes. What in the world was that? He was 0 for 5 from 3 going into that shot. And it's a straight inbounds pass to the corner for a fall-away 3 that was contested. I don't get that. I don't get that. And apparently Stephen Pearl drew that play up for Auburn to watch out for in the timeout. Stephen Pearl called the play, and Auburn knew exactly what was coming, and it was a contested 3, and he missed it. And that's poor coaching. Rick Barnes has to be better in that sort of aspect, and I think that's a lot of the reason that they have their March woes, because they get into that type of game and they can't finish. But to get people to play like you do, and you're going to be able to beat them. If not, you'll lose by 30 in Gainesville again.
Nathan, let's take a stroll across the state here and talk about the Crimson Tide and their games the past 2 weeks, or last week, sorry, beating Vanderbilt at home and then beating LSU at home. The Vanderbilt game at the time wasn't really, this is a huge win for Alabama, but looking at it now, pretty big win for the Crimson Tide. And then the LSU game, dogfight with LSU. Mark Sears is benched in the second half, does not play a single minute, but they're able to gut that win out. But let's focus on the LSU win, Nathan, because I think that's going to be the big thing here with Mark Sears not playing in the second half and still winning this basketball game. Do you agree with Nate Oates' decision to sit Mark Sears for the entire second half?
I mean, yeah, I'll back his decision. We won the game. And this is what a coach has to do. They have hard decisions they have to make constantly. This is a business. Like whether we like it or not, this is a business nowadays. And Nate Oates will lose his job if he doesn't win games like this. Well, unfortunately, Mark Sears' shots are not falling. I watched his body language, especially in the first half on the defensive end. I didn't feel like it was where it needed to be, especially for a leader of a team. And obviously, Nate Oates saw that too. And if you're not going to come out and give 100% effort on both ends of the floor, then this was what's going to happen. I felt like Nate Oates' society, he had to make a hard decision. And it's not only against Mark. It's more of a message to the whole team that even your best player, one of the most historic players in your history, can get benched. So no one's immune to having to get benched or not play any minutes. So I felt like it was more of a message than anything. I wouldn't hold it against Mark Sears. Even though his shots weren't falling, I saw hustle at times. So I know he wants to win. And you can definitely see it in the second half in his emotions on the bench. I mean, yeah, he's frustrated. He wants to go out there and win, compete. But ultimately, I think it's more just about sending a message to the rest of the team. We sit here and talk about Mark Sears, but let's focus on the rest of the team, what they were able to do. Aiden Holloway has been one of the best guards in the SEC thus far. He's shooting the ball at a showing well clip. His confidence is through the roof. He's one of the best guards in the SEC. I didn't think I was going to be saying that coming into this week, but it's the Vanderbilt game, and especially this game, he's just taken over. Mohamed Diabate has to see more minutes, man. He is an absolute dog coming off the Vanderbilt game, having a double-double, scoring a career high, I believe, 22 points. He's absolutely wild. He's like a mini Herb Jones, is what I'll say. He has a lot of tenacity, a lot of hustle. Every blue-collar thing you want to add to the team, he already has it. He needs to see more minutes. I'd like to see him start over a guy like Jaron Stevenson. He does provide a lot of the defensive end, but he has consistently struggled on the offensive end. I feel bad for him, but it's just not working out. A guy like Cliff Mooring, he has his on and off games. I felt like he was just kind of in the middle there. He did a few good things, but he was also a little lazy at times. I felt like the interior defense needed a lot more work. The shot selection, I felt like it's pretty good, but sometimes you just don't get your shots to fall at the same clip as they did Wednesday night when we ended up putting up over 100 points. But it's about utilizing the players on your team in moments. And I think with Nate Oates sending this message to the team that Mark Sears is going to get benched, that I need some of y'all to come out and play at your hardest, at your top level. And they came out and did that. And they came out and won. It wasn't pretty. LSU's a great team. They battled every single minute. I was surprised with how well they competed. But I think to take away from all this, if you can go and win a game in the SEC without your best player, that speaks miles for how good your team is. You had talent all over the floor, and you're still not 100% healthy. You also Latrell Wright's out for the season. Houston Wett still hasn't played. You didn't have Chris Young by the start. So your team's not 100% healthy and you're doing this. I couldn't ask for anything else. Just keep winning. You're gonna enter a very, very tough schedule. So your focus needs to be pinpointed on just that game. You can't look forward at all. This isn't one of these conferences that you can afford to do that, unfortunately. But I feel like there shouldn't just be this much drama surrounding the Mark Sears situation. I feel like it was supposed to be one of these games that you watch it and then move on, but take the message from it.
It was overblown, to say the least, Nathan. I don't think this situation warranted what it did. When a player's not playing good, the coach has to make a decision that if he has the talent that Alabama has, they're one of maybe a handful of teams that can afford to sit a player like Mark Sears and still win a basketball game. I think Auburn's one of the other ones, and you talk about Florida with Walter Clayton Jr. I mean, there's tons of teams in the SEC that can afford to sit a player up to the caliber of Mark Sears and win a basketball game. But the situation was overblown. Mark Sears wasn't playing good. When you're not playing good, you don't play. And that's just what's going to happen. There's going to be games where maybe Aiden Holloway doesn't play good. There was multiple times last year where Aiden Holloway did not play good at all at Auburn and did not touch the
did not play in the second half, yeah.
Exactly. So it's going to happen to everybody in their career, basketball career at least once. So Mark Sears, you had a bad game. Hold your head up high. Come back in the next game and play your tail off and show your coach that this is why I should play in the second half of a basketball game. Play defense. That's all Nate Oates wants you to do is play defense and shoot the three ball well. And that's what Mark Sears has to do if he's going to get the minutes that he deserves to get. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening and watching, students of the game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.